have led many presentations for my model classroom professional learning community. We meet about once a month, and we focus our learning on trying to increase the students' thinking in the classroom. We've narrowed this focus unnecessarily on the way the types of questions that teachers ask and how often they ask their questions. This Friday's meeting was focused really on having higher level thinking questions being incorporated into their lessons. And so we were trying to get the teachers to write some of the different higher level thinking questions using their lesson plans. One of the things that we're also working on is having our teachers using simultaneity techniques in this meeting, like pictures and visual cues and quick writes. And then we also use randomness where we're having students not blurt out, and then trying to make sure that we call on each student an equal proportion of time. The staff meeting normally lasts about 25 minutes. We technically have 30 minutes, but normally we start a minute or two late after the time of arrival, and then we try to have our teachers back in our classrooms a few minutes before the students actually get into the classrooms. My goal of the meeting was to make sure that the teachers felt that the meeting was purposeful, useful, and that I wasn't wasting their time. They felt like they were getting something value added to their teaching. I was trying to make sure that everyone had a chance to discuss with their groups and that their information can be put straight back into the classrooms. And then I asked the participants at the end to rate me how they felt like this went. I felt the meeting went really well. I was able to model my expectations of the activity with them, review some of the concepts that we've allowed so that they can complete the activity because I was asking you to use them. And then everyone actively participated in conversations. I got to listen in on them, and then I was also able to guide their thinking and to achieve success in helping them write their questions. I felt that I respected their time. I literally gave them like 1 or 2 minutes once the bell rang for us to be there to start before I started, to make sure that people who were there weren't wasting their time waiting for the other people to show up. I was successful in allowing for the collaboration of the participants, and I did feel that I did a good job listening. I know that's one of the things I've been trying to work on a little bit, is making sure that I'm listening more to the participants and to the teachers, so that I'm not interrupting them or cutting them off to add a piece of information. I did a good job. I did have a few teachers who I felt like were kind of missing the point or the mark of what the whole presentation was, but I wanted to make sure that they felt that I was listening to them, so I spent quite a few minutes, and then I had to kind of jump in because she was getting long-winded and it wasn't on the right topic, so I interrupted her, but then giving her a piece of the information that I felt like she needed to understand what the goal of the assignment of the activity, and then I allowed her to come back in and add a bunch of information, and she was able to share that, so I guided her a little bit on that area. I feel the concept of having higher level questioning is very relevant to our students and to help them improve their thinking. That's one of the things that we're doing. And if we're keeping everyone at that knowledge level, then we're not going to be successful in achieving on the high stakes standardized test when most of the questions are written at the higher level. That's one thing I did talk about in the meeting, was that if we're having this naturally and authentically in our classroom, when we're asking students to think at this deeper level, that when it's put in a passage or on a different test, that it should be pretty easy for them because they've been practicing it so much, and it's not such a forced moment in their learning. I think it's something that I even do with my daughter when we read, that I try to make sure I ask those questions where it makes her stop and think, and we use other information just so that she can see that, oh, I can think at this level. So I think that went really well. I think that we need to spend a little bit more time working on how they can get those specific questions into their lessons, and the continued practice will make it better. When I looked over their evaluations, their input, they also felt like that I was able to use their time wisely and made sure I was on topic and stuff like that. There was a lot of discussion between the PLC members. I was able to notice that there was a difference in the learning between teachers who were really invested in trying to incorporate their learning from the meetings and the teachers who were not. There were answers and comments of the teachers who were really into it, were very authentic, and you could tell that they were seeing growth in their classrooms, and they were excited about the concepts, and it was really great learning. I did notice that some of the other teachers that came in late and they kind of stayed at the back of the classroom and they really weren't participating as much. You could tell that what they're putting into this PLC is exactly what they're getting out of it. That's kind of the area that I know that I want to grow in. How do I reach those teachers? I like that the teachers who have joined the group are sitting with their teammates. So we had a table of like first grade teachers and a table of fourth grade teachers. And then we had the kinder and the special ed and some of the other teachers kind of join in. But the ones that were together were able to share the information. And so that helped them make connections and kind of, in this math classroom I did this, and this math classroom I did that. And it kind of guided them along. So that was kind of nice, that set up. Again, I like the fact that we have math teachers and science teachers. We have self-contained teachers, and then we have reading and language arts. So we're able to see a wide range of ideas and thoughts. And we kind of also discuss how it may look different in a kindergarten classroom with the type of questions that you'd be asking, but the students can still do it than it would look like in a third or fourth grade. But I do want them to understand that no matter what age level, that this is something that they can't put in their classroom. I feel that the teachers who come prepared to the meetings, what I did, we get more out of it, as I sent an email out to the teachers on Monday before a meeting on Friday, asking them to make sure they brought the materials that they needed to be able to do the activity. And then I also, when I called at 8 o'clock, the meeting starts at 8:05. When I called at 8 o'clock, I reminded the teachers again, please make sure you bring your stuff in. And then if they did show up to the meeting, I said, why don't you go ahead and go back to your classroom real quickly and grab what you needed, just so they could be prepared. Because I didn't want it to be where they're sitting for 30 minutes, they weren't able to do anything. So I think they gave them a chance to bring the materials, and then we were able to really use their time effectively, because the more preparation you put into it before we start, the better off the meetings have always gone. The first part of the meeting, when I first started it, I wanted to make sure that I welcomed them, and I set that welcoming tone and the expectations for the meeting, and then quickly went into review from some of the information that we've learned in our previous meeting and let the teachers kind of talk about it. So they made sure that they were activating that prior knowledge, because I was asking them to use that information when they were writing their question. This discussion, I think, also makes them feel safe to share their ideas. When we came back, again, I let them share their ideas, and I was trying to show that I'm growing with them and working on the same strategies just as them. And then I went ahead and I modeled a question that I was trying to get them to write, that I showed how I was writing it and how I'd put it in my classroom, and I used it in my classroom. And I think that shows that, that I'm not a superior to them, that I'm just their equal. We're doing the same thing, that I'm doing the same thing that they're doing in my classrooms, even if it looks a little bit differently. And the teachers spent, after that, I told them to write their questions, and the teachers spent quite a few minutes going over, and they were collaborating, and they were working together, and they were sharing, and they were discussing, and questions were getting written. This is the second time we had spent the meeting trying to get them to write questions. And this time around, the different changes that I had, and that made sure they brought their lesson plan, and I gave an example of a question I wanted them to complete, and I said, kind of like your exit ticket hours, we're going to share the idea, so you have to have something. I think changing those few things made sure that the meeting was definitely much more successful than it was the first time we tried to write the questions. There was just more discussion. And then I also did sent an email out this time of the survey I wanted them to fill out, have them print it and fill it out, so that they didn't feel pressured to answer a certain way because I was standing right there and they thought that I would see it. So it was more anonymous for them to just print it out. But I did notice that they didn't change very much. There was maybe one teacher who came in late and sat at the back, felt like she wasn't getting her time used as well as some of the others did. But I think overall they felt like the information was relevant. They could plug it right into their classroom, and that I was using the time wisely, and that I started on the meeting on time and ended it on time and stuff like that. So I felt like that was still really successful. Those are all strong points. I think it all goes about preparation that you get into in order to set it up, that it makes the meeting more successful. After watching the videos, a couple of things that I concluded is that I really wanted, a couple of things I noticed majorly was my hand talking. I know I'm a hand talker, but it was quite extreme in this video as I was watching myself. I know I'm passionate about what I'm presenting, and I think that sometimes when I'm trying to relay my information, I use my hands to stress my importance of some of it and just to help me express my feelings. So I'm going to try to do a little bit less of that. I have noticed that I have become a little bit better of not interrupting them and listening to them a little bit more, but I've noticed that as I'm listening, I'm saying, right, right, to validate what they're saying so they know that I am listening. But I felt like if I just right them quite a bit, then they're going to quite often that they're going to feel like I'm not really authentically listening. So maybe trying to find another way to express that I am listening to them and that I am agreeing with their ideas and their thoughts, then right. So hand talking in another way to, change that up. But I do feel that I am at least not interrupting. I mean, I'm better than where I was. I do feel that I also I need to engage those teachers more, not in a negative way that are reluctant to participate in being part of the video, but or being part of the activity, but just they seem disinterested, and trying to figure out really why they're disinterested in it. If it's, I feel like I just have to be here because it's one of the requirements that I have to do, but really trying to make sure that I build a relationship with them and trying to figure out what it is that makes them could get them more involved in the activities. So that's what I kind of want to work on. Maybe doing some more I know that when a couple of my meetings in the past, I played games with them and they were more engaged in it. And when they got some door prizes, they were more engaged in it. So trying to incorporate a little bit more of that would maybe be ideal to get them up and going, and so they're not sitting and listening and just, receiving information. But I do feel like that everything was pretty positive. My action plan for the next time that I'm going to meet with these teachers is that I'm going to really try to go into those teachers who are giving that 100% and then who really are engaged in it and ask them, what is it about this topic, or what is it about MCP, or what is it that you're interested in, and how can I continue to grow that? Using that information also to kind of reflect and then also work with the teachers who aren't. I want to go into their classrooms and also ask them, where are you at? Why, or do you feel like you're getting some information out of this, and do you feel like this is purposeful? Because they may feel like it is, and so just kind of let them kind of judge where their learning is at and see if I can get to the root of what's going on, why, for at least in my perception, that it's that they're not interested or they're unengaged in the activity, and what I can do to try to help them be a little bit more engaged in it, and not necessarily be the same as other people, but just make sure that it's something useful for them. So kind of work with that, and then really work on something to calm down my hand movements, to be just maybe awareness of it, and then kind of watching it so that I'm not so talking with my hands. As you know, you can see I'm playing with a rubber band to stop it. Maybe something as simple as that. And then also think of other words to say, that instead of saying right with them and nodding my head, what else can I do? And so that they feel like that it's validated in what they're saying and listening. But I do feel like the meeting is very successful. I've seen myself, like I said, I've presented it to this group 8 times now this year. Just this year, I've done it for 4 years now. But I do feel like I'm getting stronger and stronger in my presentations, and that the areas that I've been trying to grow on, that I'm slowly improving on each time. So I'm overall really pleased with the way things are growing and how I'm growing in my leading of meeting skills. Thanks.